Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show. And of course, thank you. Thank you for being here. Go ahead and subscribe to the show when you have the opportunity. Could be right now. Do that on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you happen to be listening to the show. Go ahead and subscribe there. And I would also encourage you to reach out and let me know what we can do to make the show better. You know, one of the things that I love about doing this show is feedback. Feedback from the audience on topics, on questions. Lots of people have submitted questions that they would like to have answered for the show. And I would love to be able to answer those questions. I actually have, now that we're talking about it, a customer, or not a customer, sorry, that's the hospitality in me, I guess, but a listener, kind of a customer, has submitted a question, and we're going to be doing one in the next week, actually. So I would love for you to reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com, just to say, hey, maybe some suggestions, some feedback, and do some rating or reviewing, on Apple Podcasts and elsewhere. If you love what we do, give a 5-star rating, type some words that reflect how you feel about the show and that kind of thing. So that would be really cool. So thank you, by the way, to everybody who has contributed their voice to those ratings and reviews of Keys to the Shop podcast. So a huge thank you to everyone who has already done this. But I want to also recommend that you reach out if you are looking for coaching and consulting. One-on-one, I work with owners and operators to make excellence in people, in quality, and operations a reality for their business. So if you would reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com, or DM on Instagram @keystotheshop, and then let's have a conversation. So I am really happy to just let you know today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Arto Brick and the Pacific Barista Series. Later in the episode, we're going to talk about those two wonderful companies. So glad for their support. But right now, I want to dive into our content for today. And this is one of those episodes where I actually haven't really planned a whole lot for it. And sometimes it just to give you a little inside scoop on how things happen in my brain and on paper. We have notes. There's, think about these conversations that I have with people, clients, or people at Coffee Fest, or just observations that are being made. And I will make a list, and there'll be some bullet points, and then we kind of go from there and fill out the rest in conversation with you as a solo episode or with a guest. A lot of times, if I have questions that I want to ask a guest that are planned, I would say 75% of what we end up talking about is actually not on the list. And that's definitely the case for most guests, I think. So that's kind of, I don't want to say fly by the seat of the pants, but trust the process, trust the intuition, and go where the wind is taking you, if you will. And I feel like the wind is taking me today down this path of talking about what is going on in coffee, specifically about the closure of Starbucks. Their 400 stores they're going to be closing. And the thing that I've been harping on LinkedIn, in comment sections, and every other post that I've made on Instagram, is about this kind of moment in coffee where we have a choice to make about who we are in the business of coffee. So one of the things I was thinking about was, we can do one of two things in the business of coffee. We can look at our competitors and assume that because they're doing something, they're doing it for a good reason. And that reason is usually because that's what customers want. After all, why would they do anything unless they had a good reason? Now, this mindset may at first sound, oh yeah, of course, this large company is doing this thing, and therefore it is well thought out, because there's a lot on the line, and they just wouldn't make decisions willy-nilly, right? But when you get to the behind the scenes of these things, what you end up seeing is that a lot of the reasons that somebody would make a play, like opening way too many stores than they can actually support, has not anything to do with the same reasons that you have for your business. They're playing a different game. there might not be any profitability behind what they're doing because it's considered more of a marketing investment than an investment in a permanent infrastructure of retail outlets, for example. And, this closure of 400 stores of Starbucks proves a few things. One, you don't want to have based your thinking on the way that they were thinking when those 400 stores were opened and now they're being closed, just like it's nothing. And of course, the reality of it is more nuanced than what we are seeing in the news. But the fact is that if you were looking to this example of a large corporate giant, you could talk about Dutch Bros, you can talk about Seven Brew, any other type of chain that has this incredibly large footprint and in your mind is driving trends and culture. The mistake is what's good for them is good for me. And I will rely upon them to do the market research for me. And therefore, if I do what they're doing, I'll get the same results. But they're playing a different game again, and maybe even going for a different demographic. It's like the old saying, you can't do Starbucks better than Starbucks. They have a thing. They have a brand. And so you have that first choice to look to see what is this company doing, this peer of mine in the coffee industry, or at least peer in the sense that they have coffee shops and they're running these things, and assume that that represents truly what the customer wants. Or you can actually go directly to the customer and you can do the research yourself in your community. Most of you listening to this are people who run single or low, single digit numbers of locations. Some of you more than that, and that's great. We want you to be able to run those very, very well so that it's not just this gamble, to try to, scale in such an aggressive way that you just hope that everything is going to work out in the end, but it's really just hope. We're all about having roots going down deep and structures and systems that produce profitable locations that care for people very well, your staff and your customers. If you're going to care for people well, you've got to care enough to research and talk to and know about those people directly. But the indirect method of saying, okay, look what they're doing, look what they're doing. Obviously, that's what customers want, and therefore we're going to do that. But you're flying blind, I think, in that sense. You don't actually know. Their decision framework for what gets put on the menu has a lot more to do with an aggregation of national sales data than it does with your specific area. This is how specialty coffee retailers, true specialty coffee retailers, can win in an environment where we see these like mushrooms growing on your lawn overnight. Seven Brews just pop up out of thin air. Scooters just pop up out of thin air. And we look at that and we say, oh, that's a growth in the coffee industry. I want you to realize that growth can happen a couple of ways. One, natural, good, healthy growth. Two, when it's out of control, we call that cancer. And am I making a direct correlation to this kind of growth in coffee and a disease? Kind of, in the sense that it doesn't produce the same thing. One kind of growth is based on necessity. And the necessity, it has restraint involved. There's restraint involved in that. We just had a conversation with Jared, who runs Ruby Coffee Roasters in Wisconsin, and he had this great thing that he said about how he doesn't want to expand into a place if there's no need for another coffee shop, which shows a lot of maturity, a lot of restraint. But if you adopt the mindset and put on your mega company hat and you say, yeah, there's a lot of coffee shops, but I'm going to go and I'm going to open more coffee shops on top of that, then you get this weird tumor like growth in coffee, but it all gets put into the same graph that you look at in a report to say, look how many coffee shops are open. Well, guess what? A lot of those coffee shops are terrible or they're not sustainable, and they're almost like an illusion, or they're almost like the storefronts that you have in some of these fake old west towns where you're supposed to imagine that that's a real town, but it's just a storefront with a shack in the back of it, right? So this is the way we need to think about things, I think, is they're playing this game that is theirs. And unless you have the same kind of framework for your business, the same kind of monetary drive to, make money back to the company and the shareholders, the investors, and that kind of thing, you're not. That's not for you to worry about. What you need to be thinking about, not even really worrying, but really studying and apprenticing yourself to, is what your community has, what it needs, and how you can help them with what you do and function in a way that is symbiotic with your community. Not to attach yourself to the community and leech off of the community, to get that business, to draw that income, to extract from them value by proposing hollow value, but to add real value. So the extractive mentality has everything to do with an inward mindset. We talk about the book, The Outward Mindset by the Arbinger Institute, or the book Leadership and Self-Deception. There's an outward mindset that talks about what can we add to the community through what we're doing, and in the process know that they will support us. That's a very different mindset than, hey, there's a really great opportunity for us to get a lot from this community by having this franchise, this corporate flag planting entity go into our community, right? The optics of what's happening with this kind of rapid expansion of these places like Blank Street and Seven Brew, et cetera, is way more about opportunistic land grabs and market grabs than it is providing actual value to the customer. You can tell because the experience is so stripped down for the purpose of efficiency and return on investment and building the business, but not necessarily building the community, not building in the direction of creating more value for the customer, but creating a value proposition that constantly wants more from the customer. And so with specialty coffee, independent brands, um, we need to adopt a mindset that is others focused, an outward mindset, not an inward mindset, an outward mindset. And that will help us tune our brains into seeing where we can provide value constantly, in faith that the return will be in the patronage and the loyalty of our customers. The opportunity we have here amidst all of the ups and downs of it, what basically amounts to like a soap opera when you're looking at what's happening with Starbucks and these larger companies. It's like the coffee business version of the Kardashians. So these are things that are happening out there. But what about your community? What about your neighborhood? Now, I understand that some people might have been influenced in ways by these companies to ask questions in your coffee shop, to be able to come in and almost have the residue of their experience of these other places. But I view those experiences that they have less as formative moments that they've had in their coffee journey, and more like they've gone through a gauntlet, almost like they've been hurt by coffee and or their perception has been warped. And now when they're in your cafe, you have the opportunity to really deliver on something that in your more agile expression of coffee, only you can do and do very, very well. The thing that Starbucks is trying to do is this turnaround to be a community, a third place. And I will tell you, that is virtually impossible for a company that size to do. The trappings are there. The costume of the authentic version of that thing is there. It is seen more like an asset to bring them more legitimacy in the market to achieve what has always been the goal, which is to make money. Now, making money is not a big, sin. I mean, you need to be profitable, but if it's your only goal, then everything else outside of that becomes really transparent that it's not in earnest. It's not, you don't actually mean it. Now there's operators and managers and people that work within corporate structures that are very well meaning, and those oftentimes those corporations really don't deserve those people. And I'd be happy to receive those folks into the world of intentional, personal, independent, and people first businesses that we talk to here on this show in specialty coffee and in the coffee house, the coffee shop community. But again, I want to talk about the idea here being you don't need to be worried that much about what is happening in that dramatic world in at that level. You need to first focus on what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and who you're accomplishing it with. And if all of those people are taken care of in the process, you are going to be taken care of as well. And then you become resilient. You're not a vacuum. That, they say nature hates a vacuum. So you break the seal on a vacuum, at the environment around it immediately gets sucked up. So if you enter this industry empty, like a vacuum, and you just get close enough to a large retail giant, and then you crack that seal, everything they do is just indiscriminately just get sucked right in. And that it has everything to do with a lack of substance going into the market. So you don't want to be caught in that process, because you're almost it's almost a bygone conclusion that you're going to be dragged along with the trends and what everybody else is doing, and you're going to hope that they're doing well, but it's a risk. If you've attached yourself like a barnacle to the hull of the giant corporate companies that are playing this different game, it's like high risk stock. You just hope that it's not going to go down. But if you, and people that have attached themselves to the type of thinking and methodology and strategy that's, right now Starbucks was using before Brian Nickel took over, and even now we don't know what the end product is going to be. How many turnarounds have they tried to accomplish, right? They're probably a little bit regretful of what they did, or why they chose to listen to that when they could have been focused on what they were doing in their community and focusing on making that its own ecosystem instead of borrowing from the ecosystem of others. With all of you'd have to assume a lot of uh, things because you don't know what the financial situation is behind the scenes. You don't know what the meetings are like when they make decisions about menu items and other things like that. And I really get irritated with the the LinkedIn world is full of people espousing cleverly worded posts about how you need to be taking a cue from these giant corporations unless you want to get left behind. Hey, if closing 400 stores was the destination, then I'm glad to have been left behind in that journey. If I don't want to go someplace, leave me behind. That's fine. I don't have a fear of missing out. I have a fear of experiencing that, right? So that's another whole story right there. The LinkedIn world is just counter to reality so many times, and from the same people, oftentimes you'll get conflicting messages, and it's not the kind of place where you can really gain insight. It's just a lot of alliteration, a lot of emojis and things like that. And anyway, let's talk about strategy and how to actually make good on this opportunity to do what I was just inferring that you do, which is focusing on your community. Well, hey, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying the episode. But I want to talk to you a little bit right now about our sponsors. And first, I'm going to start with Arto Brick. Arto Brick has been in business since the 70s, providing handmade, made in LA tiles, stonework, and hard surfaces for the nation and beyond. Armin and his brother Vod have been running it. Their brothers, their father Arto started this company, and I've been to the facility. I've seen the production from stone to tile and the painting. It's amazing. And they can make your dreams come true, really. If you have an idea of what you want on the backsplash, on the floor, on the wall, talk to them and let them help you create something beautiful. Arto.com, but best place to go actually is on the Instagram account. Follow there. And then also reach out, DM Armin over at Arto Brick. So it's at Arto Brick on Instagram. Check them out there and start a conversation today. Now, we're also sponsored by the Pacific Barista Series. So that's the line of plant-based performance beverages that are designed for baristas. The oat, the soy, the almond, etc. The whole lineup is made for professional standards and tested by baristas before it is even sold to you. So this is what has made them the cornerstone and the choice for great coffee shops all over the world for many, many decades. Now you can go to their website, pacificfoodservice.com, and then you can get samples sent to you and try it for yourself. I think if you're looking for amazing plant-based beverages for your customers, check out the Barista Series from Pacific. You can receive customers into your cafe with a mindset that automatically is excited to see them there as an opportunity to serve them and where they are on their specific journey. We do not want to be continuing this narrative of we're here to educate the customer. We're here to make them conform to the vernacular that we want them to make us feel good about our career choices and so forth. We are here to serve their needs, and we need to acquire in our cafe the grit and determination each day to make it about them and use coffee and use our space, use our words and our presence and our voices to create an environment that acknowledges, welcomes, and includes people in the process of enjoying coffee and enjoying their lives over coffee. So coffee doesn't even have to be the main thing. That could be private. All of your cupping notes, all of your ability to select and roast and serve great and amazing coffee, the understated excellence of some of the best coffee bars proves that you don't need to be far and away the place known for being a coffee geek. This is something we've lost in the coffee shop industry. Now, I will say the reason why a place like Starbucks wants to do what they're doing or trying to do is because they recognize there's something visceral and emotional and necessary and soul satisfying about that third place community coffee house thing. That is our thing. We can do that the best. And the reason why we haven't been doing it the best is because we have been just huffing our own fumes so long in competitions, in comparative analysis to people's whose large scale businesses really don't concern us that much. We have been trying to impress each other here, there, and everywhere, but we have lost sight of the point of what we're doing. Is we want to serve these customers so well that they will constantly and increasingly buy coffee from us for their own reasons, not for our reasons. I don't care why. If a customer buys the coffee you serve, your responsibility is that the coffee you bought to serve them does a service to the people behind it upstream from your cafe. That's your responsibility. We got to be done with this whole idea of passing on guilt to the customer for their purchases. They can opt into educating themselves. Certainly, we can give opportunity for them to learn. But the point is, the value that drives the most change in our business to supply sustainable business for our cafes, for the whole value stream, is excellence in consistency of serving the product to people who are going to create value in their mind for themselves with or without you. And if they invite you in to help them create a framework for what they value, great. You can do that. They'll opt into that, and that's fine. But we have kind of got it backwards. We have been just trying to throw so much information and so much crisis at them. So because we don't really take it on as our responsibility. We like to talk about things out loud to the customer so often, but we don't deliver the basics. We haven't earned their trust. That's the trust the customer has in us. If listen, my friend, a friend of there's a lot of people, let's say in like my church back home, here in Louisville, people are really into soccer. Okay, I'm not into soccer. All right, but I am willing to watch and or think about soccer way more because my friends like that thing. Now, it's not a perfect analogy, but if you like somebody, you're more likely to give what they like a chance. And there's a lot of happy, convergences that happen in the process. And your customers are similar. Now, they're already going to you for coffee. That's a win. We can celebrate that. That's how we welcome them. They chose to come here. Is that not magical to you? Is it not amazing that they chose to go to your coffee shop? And if it's not, how jaded have you become? That you're ungrateful for the person choosing you amongst other places. How serious do you take your responsibility now to make what happens with their experience very impactful and valuable, so they walk away feeling better than they did when they walked in, better than they ever thought they could at a coffee shop? It's really surprising sometimes when you get a good service experience with a good coffee in a comfortable place that doesn't smell weird, and then you walk away thinking that was not normal. That's weird. That's the kind of thing we need to see more of. That's the product of our work. Coffee is a part of it. Intention is the magic ingredient. It's the distribution tool that you use in the bed of coffee to make the water go through evenly. But we have just this experience now with coffee that's just so unevenly distributed across the coffee shop. Our efforts are so heavy on one side or heavy on the other, and we don't give this experience a chance. We're channeling. When it comes to hospitality, every extraction or every experience, the customer comes in, it's like they're the water, and they're meeting too much resistance here. It's way too fast over there, and they walk away with a bad taste in their mouth. So here's what we need to be doing: focus on others in an outward mindset. And when you see the need, then you can adjust what you're doing in your cafe to create more of a seamless process of enjoyment of coffee. And you can ask questions. You can ask questions to your guests. You can ask them how they like their coffee. What do they like best about coming to your coffee shop? Or what would they change if they could change anything? We don't have to be afraid of this stuff. We're actually, I think we employ the same kind of mindset that, when we're looking at the second, third, and four time removed example of a large coffee company to say that's what we're going to do because that's what customers want. Even though we haven't even talked to customers, we're just looking at what corporate giants are doing and assuming they have all of this customer information. That kind of a removal from the process, right? It provides this low resolution image of what it is we're shooting at. It's like a blurry picture, and we're trying to aim at this blurry picture. The same thing can be said about your Yelp page. You, I think, could get a lot better information from that Yelp page or Google reviews. That's really good. You should do that. In our shift break recently, we said, you want to feel good about yourself and what you're doing and that you've actually accomplished good things. Go look at those 5-star reviews. Don't shrug them off like it's some kind of it's a noble thing to be falsely humble, and embrace and celebrate your wins. But also, are you actually having real conversations with your customers about the things like, how do you like, I'm really curious. What do you think about this? Have a conversation like as if you had your own little podcast and you want to talk to your customers. This is the kind of stuff that makes it a place worth supporting when the chips are down. I like that place because those people are my people that run it. They're there, they are for me, they're creating, when they take care of issues really quickly that happen in the cafe. They are dedicated to excellence, they're humble, they're connected, they take care of their people. I can tell because the staff there seem happy to see me and happy to work there. And there's a whole host, a constellation of different factors that operationally lead to that kind of a business. And I say that because, not to make it overwhelming, but to prove to you, you just don't have time to worry about what other people are doing. You have way more to focus on right here to keep you busy. And if you're busy worrying about what other people are doing, you're probably dropping the ball in something that you should be doing already, and that you could be learning about within your business and gaining more operational and organizational self-knowledge. And so this is the time for us in specialty coffee retail, the coffee houses that are independently owned and people first, with a mission to serve well those people in our community through amazing coffee, and have integrity through that whole process, and do as much good as we can for as many people as we can through good coffee. This is our opportunity. Look at the news and say, yeah, this has always been valuable to people. This is why people are stopped. This is why those stores are closing, because people were just going other places. They're tired. They're trying to fix the wrong things. Writing names on cups is not the thing that people miss. Nobody cares. you know, um, couches. I could go to a place and there's no couch if they're doing if they are very well trained and taken care of, and they're taking care of me, and they're friendly, and they're consistent in their quality of coffee, and they actually take me seriously as a customer, and they take their baristas seriously as participants and partners in the process of creating a coffee shop. And they supply resource and margin for their managers to lead well and invest in relationships behind the bar, so that those folks can invest in relationships across the bar. It doesn't need a couch. It doesn't need Sharpies. It doesn't, there's no aesthetic that can make up for a heart issue, a culture issue. We have the best chance of fulfilling that. And as people exit these places and they go to try that local place again, maybe, or for the first time, let's start on a higher level. Let's reinvest into how we're going to win them over through sincere and earnest effort in our operations, our people, and our quality. And this is how we win. And this is how coffee wins. This is actually how we make coffee better. And that is a value proposition to the customer. It doesn't involve trends per se. It doesn't involve higher levels of technological brilliance, right? It just requires some of the basics taken seriously long enough for it to be trusted that this actually is who this company is. It's not just a gimmick. It's not just an extractive strategy. It really is who they are. And that's the place I want to go. And that creates a lot of stability, and it's what makes specialty special. So that's what I had to share today. A little stream of consciousness for you. Hope that it made sense and it wasn't too rambly. But as always, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to email chris@keystotheshop.com, if you want to be involved in some coaching or consulting with your team or yourself one-on-one. This is what I do full time, as well as this podcast. So hit me up. Go into Instagram if you want to DM Keys to the Shop, @Keys to the Shop. Chris DeFirio on LinkedIn. You can, again, subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts. And as always, I hope that this show has truly given you keys to the shop.